invisible, but it contains its visible parts within our heritage. And I'm focusing on problems of Serbian nationalism that were built in the 19th century after the creation of the Ottoman Empire, and which resulted in the lots of physical remains, but still we have a lot of material heritage of the Ottoman era as well. And the Ottoman heritage in Serbia nowadays and last century is having a quite contested nature when people are mostly neglecting this very large period of history, of national history of life under the foreign rule. And if you can see on the slides, with the rule of the Ottomans in Serbia in direct and indirect way lasted from 1389 to 1988 officially, but they spent to 1930 in the Hadi Sharif of the liberation to the king of Miloš, when most of the Turkish population was evicted from Serbia. And within our national identity and the construct that was made in the late 19th century, the Ottoman and resistance to the Ottoman element, cultural element that was very much involved with the Serbian nation, just simply with the logic of living together for 4 centuries together in some kind of coexistence, was very hard. And first of all, the physical destruction of the old material evidence was conducted with governmentally organized, and lots of valuable architectural sites was lost. This loss of the physical evidence, material heritage of the Ottoman era in Serbia was usually very much academically explored, and was the point to outline the nationalism that existed in Serbia at the time. And it was not true at all, because most of these heritage sites were destructed in previous wartime with Austro-Hungarian Empire. That was constantly was happening in the Balkan area. So most of the lost heritage sites were actually destroyed in the 17th and early 18th centuries by Austro-Hungarian military campaigns. Of course, we did our share in the destruction after the liberation, and mostly the full neglect of the heritage, which Ottoman heritage is not the unique sample and not the only, because we are well known to neglect our own legacy, and of course including the Yugoslav memorial sites, including older sites, Roman sites, which we are as an area very rich of all these layers of history. So we now experience the tension between diversity, which is Europeanly supported, and you have very diverse cultural sites, and narratives which are opposing each other. So from the Western perspective, you can nurture the Western civilization impacts, and from the national, you should nurture the nationalist patriotic feelings, and from the Eastern or Ottoman investment fund like TIKA, you should promote the original Ottoman contributions and so on. So we have very big tensions between the interests of the different parties. Regional politics, of course, impact how this heritage is nurtured. We have very big struggles to define what is truly foreign, what is indigenous. And there are very large debates in academia how to approach this contested heritage. And of course, we experience lots of international involvement in solving these all issues. There are lots of distorted narratives. The Serbian cultural politics chooses to keep the most remarkable heritage sites, which have the we have Ottoman heritage sites. For example, near Niš there is very famous Čele Kula, which is as Ottoman because Ottomans built it, like the tower, just to dedicate to show how the liberation struggles were punished, so to make fear to the locals not to try it again. And even this tower was widely written about it by French artist Alphonse Lamartine. Wrote very romantic song on how these monuments of the Ottoman terror should be nurtured by the locals, just to remind them what were their fathers' efforts to make the liberty possible for their descendants. So these sites of the Ottomans has double narratives. The Ottoman one celebrating their victory, and the Serbian one celebrating their struggles, their life, their final liberation. So there are very interesting sites to visit, and the fluid boundaries between our vernacular architecture, so the cultural influences that came with Ottomans to the area, were also there were also Serbian or other cultures heritage that was taken to the Ottoman countries. So we now have very large districts of Istanbul who has a population direct descendants of Serbian Janissary troops or populated or local people who were sent there to work in agriculture, in trade and so on. And lots of diplomats, of course, because there were very much Serbians who were having very high positions in the Ottoman administration. So there is a very big problem of what we know and what we learn in our formal history books, and what really history shows us, and what material evidence and the stories that are quite different from what we learn in very short-term narratives. And of course, governmentally or selected ones, stories. So just to point out, there are very big challenges of protection of these sites, because even when the investment comes from foreign investment comes, it is short term, and as we can see, this is in a niche. This is a mosque of Balibek, who was of Bosnian or Serbian origin, and it's neglected. And there was some investment, and the other one is from Kruševac. It is a fountain that there is this Ottoman fountain which was restored, organized, like being nice for people, local people to enjoy the area, because it is a central part of the city, and now it's totally destructed. The way of speaking about Kruševac, which is my hometown, actually, is very complex, because Kruševac was the Serbian medieval capital and the place where the famous Kosovo battle was. The old Kosovo myth in Serbia evolved in this Kruševac, because it was the capital of the Prince Lazar, the one who was fighting in the Kosovo battle against the Ottoman rule. And that narrative, the Kosovo myth, is the central point of Serbian nationalism and the national narrative. So it is very high point, and it's very inscribed into the whole urban fabric and the whole identity of Kruševac as a city. Actually, Kruševac was built in 3070. I will not engage with you, but it is in 14th century, 20 years before the Kosovo battle. So its development before that, it was very small settlement, and nothing big was there. It developed as an urban area, the capital of medieval Serbia, only in 14th century, and even at that time, the struggles with the Ottomans was started in the eastern borders, and they were approaching. So the building of the new capital was directly organized because of the threat of the Ottomans. And all the monasteries that were built by this family, Lazarevic, who inherited our capital, medieval kings and followed the line of the establishers of the Serbian nationhood, are very, very strongly involved in what Serbian nation is representing now, themselves now. So after, there are very, very big stories about this. There is epic songs, very related. We have cycluses of epic or literature, national literature that evokes all this Kosovo and all this period that was under the rule of the Ottomans. And it is within our national story, very, very important moment of our history, national history. And after the battle, because of diplomatic relations, because both the Sultan Murad died in the battle and the Prince Lazar as well, Serbia with diplomatic, because it is very on European level, on Christian level, this battle marked the stopping of the Ottomans, because it was the whole battle was indecisive who won. So there is several historical facts that the whole Europe celebrated the event like Serbian victory as Christian victory. So we have the French King Charles on occasion of celebration said that there was a procession in Notre Dame, and the whole French churches were ringing the bells in the memory and the victory of this battle. And there is a famous tapestry in one big castle in the Loire Valley, which is with the Kosovo battle in the castle and this is a recent finding, which is very interesting from the Serbian point of view, because no one knows how big actually this battle was and how important for Europe as a whole and for Christianity was. So the Serbia continued to exist in the vassal position for next 50 years after the battle because of diplomatic relations of Serbia and Ottoman sultans, Bayazid, because he took in marriage the Serbian princess, the very same daughter of King Lazar who he killed. So it is very controversial how many stories with historical facts, of course, in the background, are evolving and interlinking this heritage, which is Serbian as much as it is Ottoman in the area. After the final conquest of Serbia in 1456, Kruševac lost his status, of course, and the whole administration slowly progressed from the clearly Serbian to Ottoman administration, and there was clear eviction of Christian population, not eviction as or killings, but mostly physical movement to the rural settlements and surrounding to support the Ottoman or Turkish urban population in the city itself. And so after the mid-15th century, the whole Kruševac as a city acquired Turkish name Alaca Hisar, which means colorful stones on which the medieval fortress was made. The local stone, it is the same as Kruševac, which means the Krušac is the stone, which is taken from the local river, and it's colorful. And so it has same meaning and total different sound. So it existed like that for 4.5 centuries under that name, under that culture, the building, the whole urbanization of Kruševac that was organized by Ottomans at the time. So in the medieval times we had the suburb with the population and the fortress, nothing else. And the urbanization was brought by the Ottomans, which we don't like to accept, but it is the fact. So in Kruševac, 7 mosques existed at the time.
Many megdebs and madrasas, fountains, khans and karavans, all directed by the religious needs of the new population that was settled in this area, because Kruševac was a very strategic point at the time. So this information about how many mosques was there is only in the writings of Evliya Çelebi, the famous Ottoman writer, because after war all these buildings were totally destructed, along with material evidences in writing. So all the archives were burnt as well. So there was no writings of where these mosques are actually located. We have just we know that one was 300 meters from the medieval fortresses, and because in the 1973 they discovered the remains of the old hammam. And this on the left you see the remains of the hammam, and this on the right is the hammam, and on the left is the fountain. It's called Lazar's Fountain, but actually there is a very big debate whether Ottomans built it because of the proximity of the hammam. And the hammam was built near the mosque. So we know that this was built by Ottomans actually, and there is a whole line with 5 fountains remaining now. This is physical evidence, but there are lots of legends and lots of stories that are invisible and people do not know about it. And these fountains are called in local Turkish fountains, but each one of them has a Serbian name. So it's quite controversial aspect on how we deal with this heritage of ours. And even in museum, if you imagine almost 500 years of Ottoman presence in Kruševac, and you have just few artifacts in the museum that show. We are having lots of artifacts showing medieval archery, medieval weapons, clothing, everything that is national symbolics, and of course the big battle of Kosovo battle is shown. But if you ask for the Ottoman artifacts, nothing is there. So it is quite controversial in many museums that we have a very big gap with artifacts of the culture that was present for the most of our history, because we have 150 years of Serbian nation after liberation for Turks, several hundreds, 200 or 300 years before the Ottomans, and 500 years under the Ottomans. Not exact, but approximate. So we have a big problem we have the materials, but we don't like to expose it like part of our narratives. So this is a problem which we have to deal with. And if you speak about the clothing, about the music, about the other intangible heritage, about the gastronomy, you see the fusion between the national and Ottoman, and which is very obvious when you go to the restaurants in everyday life. The tourists notice that, but we are trying to decrease the importance of this element, because we have still very emotional feelings towards the which is supported by our education and so on and so on. And we struggle with this. If you look at this and you don't know the history, this on the left with the sword, if you see it's sablja or Ottoman sword, and the Ottoman clothing, it is Prince Miloš Obrenović, the liberator from the Ottoman. So the style, the everyday life, and the hierarchy of aristocrats at the time and diplomats, they were fully styled like Ottomans, because it was a prestigious way of dressing, prestigious way of equipment of the home. So in very rich families had fully arranged Ottoman style in everyday living. So even though they tried to, there has many anecdotes how the other people, Serbian people, tried to downsize the Ottoman, and they were stubborn and so on and so on. So we want to say this: the Ottomans didn't know what to do with Serbians, because we didn't want to cooperate all the time, and they were always afraid which side we will choose. So, but we managed to survive under the Ottomans for 5 centuries. So actually the narratives that there was only suppression is debatable on as a historical fact, because in 500 years they had quite opportunity to erase all the elements of the Serbian nation. They had time, opportunity for it, and they didn't do it. But we, in 10 years after our liberation, were very capable of erasing the physical evidence that they were here. So it is quite concerning in terms of how we approach, because heritage, even our own, because we simply seem to neglect and just choosing things in terms of current politics, what is valuable to preserve and what is not, and that's a problem.
Could I stop you here because of the time? We have this lunch being, but I would suggest that we pick up the same theme immediately after lunch and check among ourselves to what extent there is still this systematic suppression of the Ottoman, the recognition of the heritage, and whether is anything to be done also in the context of the Sultans Trail to concretely help to improve that recognition. So I suggest we do this after lunch, with you still in the chair here. Okay, we'll break for lunch now. Thank you. Okay, well, let's start again. We have a technical innovation. We have here a mic. Hello. Excuse me. We have a second mic, but only for receiving, I understand, and not for speaking into. So it's technical innovations here. We ended the last session with Aleksandra from Serbia, who told us about the neglect, the systematic neglect, if not suppression, of a huge part of Serbian history. She wanted to conclude, and then we may have a few comments if there are any, but you wanted to expand the view that it's not just Serbia that is writing off its heritage, but there are other countries in the region as well. So for us trailers, this is very relevant information. So Aleksandra, here again.
Thank you.
Dat je haar niet als het tweede deel introduceert, maar gewoon als het de eerste introductie doet. Het is voor de opname.
Ja.
De eerste opname is dit. Hij was net buiten omdat er miscommunicatie was. En anders komt onze compilatie van.
Okay, this is an internal logical issue, but since we had a change of program because of absences, we have found Aleksandra prepared to not just take care of her own subject, but take the next item on the agenda along with it and bring us up to date on this issue of the Ottoman heritage along the trail, in particular in Serbia, in her case. So let's complete this issue and maybe invite a comment or two and then move on to the next item. Aleksandra?
Thank you. I was speaking about the visible heritage in Serbia in last. Okay, and now we are speaking about the contested nature, and I will not go back to my my presentation, but I want you to have a glance of the Croat colleague Emina Hodžić, who is a PhD candidate of the Department of Anthropology, Ethnology in Zagreb, University of Zagreb. And she's unfortunately, because of the illness, not here with us, but she is very engaged in researching the Ottoman heritage in Croatia. And mostly her findings are overlapping with mine because we deal with the same problems of how we deal with the Ottoman heritage in our countries, where now our national narratives are set against our Ottoman legacy, which is we can see in our landscape, in our legacy, in our material heritage, as much as we can see it here in our intangible heritage and cultural aspects. So I'm sorry, just to show, I will not, because she's speaking here about visible and invisible markers in Croatia. And she did a research as well, as we heard about the Sultan Suleiman's bridge in Osijek and Darda, bridging this area for the Sultan Suleiman's last conquest to Vienna. And as you can see from her slides, the main points are almost the same as mine. But she's talking about differences which are evident because in Croatia, due to less extended rule of the Ottomans in history, there are much more or less Ottoman relics in material and immaterial heritage, as well as the Western influences much stronger in here. Austrian-Hungarian Empire was present and impacting providing the cultural influences, the Catholicism and all religious aspects and other aspects in the culture which prevented the Ottoman influx of the cultural influence to a certain extent. So the efforts needs to be much more engaged in searching something that is truly invisible and are remaining in only small fragments within Croatia. But this legacy expands not only in Croatia but also in Hungary, which is similar in terms of Ottoman heritage in scopes like Croatia, and as well in Austrian eastern parts, where I did my research on the Ottoman legacy in Graz and Vienna, and where the fragments of the Ottoman influences and the cultural impacts can be seen only if deeply searched in very small elements of how the local communities dealt with potential threat, existence threat from the intrusion of the borderline. The military border in Croatia and Bosnia that was financed by Austrians to defend themselves also have very strong connections to the Ottoman legacy. The intangible heritage of Alka, Senjska Alka, is also evoking some very strong links and the battles between the Croats and Slavic and Bosnian uskoks, or that's formations or military formations that were fighting and financed by Austrian Empire to protect the border and made mostly of Slavic, Serbian and Bosnian people, who were, of course, changing sides depending on the diplomacy, depending on their interests and so on. So there are many hidden elements that strongly connect all these countries with the Ottoman culture, threat, whatever, and how the people dealt with this. So you can see it everywhere, and even in French courts, and even in English traditions, in a coffee tradition, or in whole Europe, it's brought by Ottomans. Lots of things were brought. The tulips in the Netherlands were brought from diplomacy of the Ottomans. So you see these fragments that can connect Europe to the Ottoman legacy, and it's very variable and different and very interesting. So if we look for very nice and very interesting stories that doesn't have to be dark without losing our national and patriotic markers of our culture in the line, and being able to present our national histories by nurturing the Ottoman legacy and showcasing what happened from the perspective of the Serbian and the perspective of the Ottoman and the perspective from someone who was not involved directly or indirectly in the politics in this very active and very war-colored area, we can find very, very interesting links and find a way to make it more flexible for cooperation. If we want to seek divisions and things that make us apart, we can surely do that as well. But it depends on the personality of the people who are doing the diplomacy in one way or another. So let's hope that the Sultans Trail can do this positive linking.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's very. Thank you very much, Aleksandra. This is obviously a very important and much overlooked aspect of the regional issues and of coming along with the Sultan Trail. So it's very fitting to have this highlighted in this symposium, I think. Is there any comments on this systematic neglect of the Ottoman heritage in the various countries? Is anyone to provide some testimony to it or comments? Yes.
You can do this otherwise. Is that okay?
There is a.
I have two questions. We met already, so I don't introduce myself. I have to look at you?
Yeah, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, please.
Okay, my name is University of Amsterdam. I came for the first time in Ilok in 1972. I came for the second time in Ilok in 1996. So before the war and after the war. This is my third time to be here. I traveled all alone, never walking, never cycling, never electric car. I had a transport bus at the beginning, we were here for years. The donkey. And the donkey again. I was thrown in, part of it. I have two questions. What is national heritage when nationalism is a 19th century term? My first question. My second question is, what is Ottoman heritage when the Ottoman Empire was a nationalist Russia?
Yes.
Very multiple heritage. I can talk about Mustard, where it is too. How to go on with these words, which all come from the 19th century?
Yes.
And you look at periods which is far before. That's my question.
Yes, but
Okay.
creation of the nation
You can
or the ethnics, you create. Okay.
Yeah, this one is.
Okay, sorry, I'm sorry. Okay, the creation of the nation or the nationhood, at least in Serbian context, became in the early 9th century. It was ethnic division between Serbian tribes, Slavic tribes, and they had a very clear identity, not national identity, which was not nationalistically colored as it was afterwards when you needed to clearly define. You had, in Serbia, you had Germans or Sas miners, you had Jews, you had all kinds of people living in medieval countries. There was religious division. These were Christians, Muslims, Jews, whatever, but they were never so clear and so diverse definition used in the politics, so you can exclude someone from just to deny him the right to the legacy, to part of your legacy. So the nationalism as a concept was defined to make these clear distinctions between people with the political goal to keep your clear borders, which in the Balkans is very hard to make historically, because we have so much layers of history, mixing of people. With the Croatia after war, there were very strong issues how to divide people who coexisted and mixed in marriage. And one at the point of time had to decide if he's going to be a Croat because his mother or father is a Croat, the other one was a Serb. So you have brothers in blood, one being Serb and one being Croat, in, mindscape, in national definition of himself. So the nationalism is invention with the clear goals, political goals. And the culture and the ethnic aspect is not. You know, you define on multiple, the language. If you see the language as one element of the national identity, you cannot find the very big distinctions between Croats and Serbs or Serbs and Macedonians. We gather, we speak all the same language. Even you can understand Bulgarians, even you can understand Slovenians, which are different. So in terms of several cultural elements that connect us, and different other elements that divide us. So you choose. The nationalism is invention to make these lines more clear and more drastical. And you cannot mix them. Usually people in their minds, people who are not educated, mix the concepts. So that's my answer. That's the problem in this area we have to deal with.
We created our own problem.
Yes, but people do it. People.
I have just mentioned to me one sentence.
Yeah, one sentence.
News from the last few days. New director of the Serbian National Theatre in Novi Sad, I forgot his name, unfortunately, has said that interethnic marriages are a menace and a cancer. Yeah, I saw it. I cannot quote really, but that's duly pointed.
Yeah, so what is your point here?
My point is how it's possible that such people exist and play a role of director of national theatre.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Yes,
You want him to be government?
He's on the way to government, I think.
Yeah. Okay, it's...
That's my mistake.
Can I say one sentence or two about this diverse heritage of the Ottoman Empire? The question of we don't ask that question with respect to the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, of course, has very many different aspects. The Ottoman Empire in Algeria, in Morocco, is quite different from that from Serbia, Croatia, etc. Still, it's an empire. It has some type of heritage which is...
it's multi-ethnic.
Multi-ethnic, etc. And the first thing you can do is what Mr. Erdogan is doing, that the Ottoman Empire is Turkey.
Yes, that's a problem. And that's why they are not popular here, because...
All right, you want a further comment?
No.
Yeah.
That was not a question.
It's a comment. Okay, I think we should, also with view of the time, we move on to, let me see, what is say.